Assignment 4, Part 2. The changing structure of the Jewish community in the modern world. Up until now, all Jews had belonged to the community, and a community had the power to impose its norms on all of its members. But this was no longer the case. Not only did Jews no longer have to belong to a Jewish community, many of them did not want to. We can identify 5 reasons why Jews traditionally felt that they needed a Jewish community. 1. Physical security. 2. Religious life. 3. Education. 4. Social security. 5. Emotional security. Let us examine how each of these 5 reasons compared in the pre-modern and modern worlds. 1. Physical security. Pre-modern world. In an environment that was often hostile to them, Jews had a great need for physical security. The most likely guarantee of physical security was to live within a community, strength in numbers. Modern world. One of the major changes for Jews was a feeling of security in the modern world, because of their new sense of belonging as citizens in the places that they lived. They knew that it was still dangerous to be a Jew in many places, but the change was that they could rely on the state to protect them, not because they were useful or because the ruler pitied them, but because they had basic rights and the state had a duty to protect these rights. As a result, the function of the traditional community was almost completely replaced for many Jews by the modern state. 2. Religious life. Pre-modern. Jewish religious life was dependent on the existence of a Jewish community. Jewish people needed things like a synagogue, a kosher butcher, a cemetery, and a mikvah, ritual bath. Modern. This requirement stayed, but only for those Jews who still had traditional religious needs. If many Jews had stopped attending synagogue, a synagogue was no longer important for them. If many Jews had stopped observing the rules of kashrut, a kosher butcher was no longer important for them. 3. Education. Pre-modern. Education was at the centre of Jewish life. Jews were expected to be familiar with religious texts and to understand how to apply them to everyday life. Modern. Traditional Jewish education became less important to many Jews. Education in general was as important as ever to Jewish parents, but it was a different sort of education, the sort needed to advance in society. This kind of education could be best provided by non-Jewish institutions. Jewish education was often reduced to a supplementary education, looked down on by parents, and disliked by the children as a waste of time. 4. Social security. Pre-modern. Traditional Jewish communities were always highly active in meeting the needs of their vulnerable members. Jewish communities had always been ahead of non-Jewish society in terms of supplying assistance to the needy. Jewish givers were motivated by the religious commandment to look after members of their own community. Modern. As the Jewish world opened up to the modern world in general, many Jews felt that they could give their money and assistance to causes not limited to the local Jewish community. This therefore weakened what had been a very strong internal welfare system. 5. Emotional security. Pre-modern. Perhaps above all, a Jew needed support. Living in a land which did not ultimately belong to them, Jews needed the support of other Jews to feel that they were not alone. Modern. Jews were no longer alone. Many felt at home in their countries and desperately wanted to prove this to the outside world. The support they needed was from non-Jewish citizens willing to accept them. So we can see that the old reasons keeping Jews closely attached to their communities were unravelling. The traditional community had lost its meaning for many Jews in the West. Either the community would fade away, or it would have to find a new role. This takes us up to the modern day, and to the next phase of the story of the Jewish community. The Jewish community in search of meaning and in search of a reason to exist. Let us hear from a witness living today. This is Michael. He is 55 years old and lives in Chicago, USA.
My grandfather, over in Eastern Europe, was an important member of the Jewish community. He believed everything about his religion and did everything that his religion demanded. He was a Jew through and through. For him, the Mishnah and the Talmud were his guidebook to daily life. He accepted it all. His community was his whole world. Anything of value was within the walls of his community. It all seemed so simple. That's the way I saw him, at least. I only knew him when I was a little boy, and he was already a very old man. By that time, he was living in America. He had come over towards the end of his life. The world was changing around him, and he did not know what had hit him. He used to sit in our house all day, dressed in his black coat with a volume of Talmud in front of him. He was horrified by the world we lived in. He thought he was in Egypt or Babylon or somewhere. Our world was simply un-Jewish by his standards. And that is in spite of the fact that my father regularly attended synagogue every Shabbat morning. We kept Shabbat, we had a kosher home. That was Jewish to my parents, but not to my grandfather. He died without ever really making peace with his new situation. My parents were modern Jews. As I say, my father went to the synagogue every week. I don't know what relationship he had with God while he was there. He talked stocks and bonds and shares through most of the service, but at least he was there. I think he probably went because he liked it, getting together with his friends and all that. It was like going to a club, but his club was his synagogue. I don't think he had any friends that weren't Jewish, although he had come into contact with plenty of non-Jewish people through his business. My mother, too. She was always volunteering for a good cause, but once again, everything was Jewish. From one point of view, my parents were a million miles away from my grandfather's world, but from another point of view, they were actually quite like him. They, too, really only moved within the Jewish world. I'm not sure they ever completely trusted anyone who wasn't Jewish. It was like tribalism. Either you were a member of the tribe or you weren't. And if you weren't, then they thought you were probably against them. And now for me. I see myself as a good Jew, but I live in a totally different world to that of my grandfather and parents. I have a mixed social group. I have many good friends that I totally trust who aren't Jewish. And I've experienced many things that my parents, let alone my grandfather, would never have imagined possible. I visited churches, for example. Not to pray, of course, but to hear concerts and to see the architecture. There is nothing like a church for beauty. I go to synagogue too, but not regularly like my father. Prayer doesn't mean very much to me, at least not formal prayers from a book. The irony is that I probably understand the prayers better than my father did. I'm simply better educated in Jewish terms. I go to courses at the Jewish Community Theater. I even take a couple of courses through the internet. I know quite a bit of Hebrew too. And why not? It's my culture. I'm interested in culture and history and things like that. It'll never be my whole world, and the Jews will never be my only people either. I'm an American Jew, and I live within both worlds, American and Jewish, and both of them are important to me. I'm also interested in black causes and Asian causes, as well as Jewish causes. I'll as willingly give to the victims of an earthquake in Pakistan as I will to a Jewish cause. And why not? I'm a member of the Jewish tribe, but that's just one little piece of the whole human tribe to which we all belong.
Michael is just one example of a Jew in today's world. He's not typical, but there are lots like him. The truth is that you can't really talk about typical anymore. What characterises a Jew like Michael is that he is open to the Jewish experience, but it will not be the only way that he experiences the world. Being Jewish is an important part of his identity, and he's happy to buy into aspects that appeal to him. But he will never buy into being Jewish as a package deal, the way that his grandfather, and in a different way his parents did. So what about Michael's relationship with his Jewish community? Again, he will get involved only if he is offered something that is meaningful for him. It has to appeal to him more than all of the other possibilities that his world offers him. He mentions courses that he takes in his Jewish community centre. He will go to them if they are more appealing than other courses he may want to take. He may give them the benefit of the doubt over other possibilities because he accepts that they are part of his culture, but they will have to be good nevertheless. This is the key to understanding Jewish community and its role in the lives of those who are living with one foot in and one foot out. The involvement of these people in their community will depend largely on the effectiveness of its marketing and on the quality of what it is offering. Since membership of a Jewish community is voluntary, the community must come to the individual Jew and give her or him a good reason to want to be part of it. For some, this reason is cultural. For others, it might be spiritual, or educational, or social. The worldwide growth of the Jewish Community Centre as an institution is a good illustration of this. Most of these centres do not have a synagogue, but they provide a space for Jews to get together for a wide variety of Jewish purposes. That ends assignment for part 2. There will be one more recording for assignment for part 3, starting here.